Hi, fourth graders. Today we're going to be working on Module 5, Lesson 28, and our goal for today is to be able to create a line plot where we plot our fractions. So I can plot fractions on a line plot. So you might be asking, well, Ms. Hawkinson, what is a line plot? A line plot is just a fancy word for a number line, okay? And our number line is going to need to include all of these measurements, okay? And I call them measurements because if you notice, it says the chart to the right shows the distance fourth graders in Miss Smith's class were able to run before stopping to rest. Create a line plot to display the data. So here are the students. Here's the distance in miles that they were able to run. So this is the measurement, and this is our data here. So our data shows how far they ran, okay? So we're plotting all of those fractions. And something that's interesting is that when we're plotting fractions, we want to do so from lowest to highest, okay? And we also want to make sure that we are writing them in order, so from smallest to biggest. That's what I meant by lowest to highest, smaller fractional units to bigger fractional units. And then in essence, fourth graders, in order for us to accurately plot these, we have to compare their values. So we're also, by plotting them on a line plot, we are comparing them. We're deciding, oh, this one's smaller, this one's bigger, oh, these ones have a bigger hole, they're going to go over here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do together. So you don't need to do anything on your scratch paper other than draw a nice big line plot. Alright, fourth graders, and I'm going to start over because I want mine to be really nice and big so that we can see. Alright, so let's look at our fractions here in the chart. Let's see what their values are. Okay, looks like we have holes here. We have holes that go all the way to 2 and above 2 because it has the fractional unit also. So let's see, do I have any just fractions? Yeah, here at 5/8, that's less than a whole. So that means I'm going to start my line plot at 0, okay? And I'm going to end it with a 3. And why is that? It's because all of the fractions here that have 2 as a whole, they also have a fraction with it. So that means it's more than 2, but not quite 3. So I can end it at 3. So then that means I need to divide my line plot into 3 whole parts. And remember, pretty equally. So here's going to be my 1 whole, and here's going to be my 2 wholes. So between my 0 and 1 can be fractions that aren't quite a whole. Between my 1 and 2, it's going to be fractions that are going to be 1 whole with some fractions, and between 2 and 3 are going to be the fractions that have 2 wholes and some fractions. Alright, so one thing I'm going to go ahead and do, and this might help you also, is I'm going to write down all of the fractions that are less than 1. Write them down first so I can look at them. So I'm going to look at my data again, and I'm looking for any fraction that does not have a whole. It's just the fraction. Oh, right here, Jenny. 5/8 is less than a whole. Okay, now I'm going to look for any fraction that is greater than 1, but less than 2. So anything that's in between a whole and 2. Okay, so that's going to, now I'm looking for fractions that have 1 as a whole. Okay, looks like there's 2. Ariana is 1 and 3. Oopsie, I wrote that wrong. 1 and 3/4. And then Morgan is 1 and 5/8. Okay, lastly, I'm looking for those fractions that are greater than 2, but obviously less than 3. And I'm going to write them here. So Joe, 2 1/2. Bobby, 2 1/8. Jack, 2 5/8. Sasha, 2 1/4. Tyler, 2 2/4. Anson, 2 and 2/8. Chandra, 2 and 4/8. Wow, okay, so looks like from this section here, there's going to be quite a lot of fractions, so I'm just making that prediction based off of seeing all of these here that are between 2 wholes and 3 wholes. All right, so remember I said we want to start with the lowest fractional unit or fraction, and that means which fraction is the least value. Okay, so what is the smallest one we have? Well, right here we have 5/8. So what is half of 8? That would be 4. So 4/8 would be a half. Sitting right about here would be a half. And this is just one more. So I'm going to plot it right about here, and that's going to be my 5/8. Okay? Alright, so we are done with the first one. Put a mark on that one. Alright, now let's do here the fractions between 1 and 2. We have 2 of them. We have 1 and 3/4 and 1 and 5/8. You'll notice that their units are not the same. One is 8ths and one is 4ths. Okay, so I'm going to divide up between my 1 and 2 this into 8ths. So 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8. Alright, so let's go ahead and count 1 and 5/8 to plot that one. 1 and 1/5, or 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8. So right here is going to be 1 and 5/8. Okay, so now let's think about 4 is very similar to 8. 4 times 2 is 8. So I can make my 4ths into 8ths by timesing it by 2. So if I times this by 2, 1 3/4 times 2 over 2, that would be 1 and 6/8. Now look, I have 8ths here. 1 and 6/8, 1 and 5/8. So I can plot that. I'm going to plot it at the 6, at the 6/8. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8. So 1 and 6/8 is here. And I did that by converting my 3/4 into an equivalent fraction, 5/8. Okay? And you can see that right here. So actually, I should probably put that this isn't 1 and 6/8. I'm going to put the original fraction. And that's going to be 1 and 3/4 is here. We'll draw an arrow. And this one is going, I'll just put a circle here so it's attached to the actual fraction. There we go. Alright, so now we're moving on to, I'm going to erase some of this work here so that we can see. And I'm going to erase this top part since I know that I'm already done with that. Okay, so now I'm left with my fractions that are between 2 and 3. Okay, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fractions here. Alright, again, let's look at our units. I have 8ths, I have 4ths, I have halves, and 8ths. So I'm going to divide up my line plot, my number line, into the largest number or the smallest unit, which is 8. Okay, 8. So I'm going to do that again. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and then 3 whole would be 2 and 8/8. Alright, now I can start plotting. I'm going to start with all of my fractions that have 8ths as their unit. 2 and 4/8. What is half of 8? 4. So this is 2 and 4/8 is also equal to 2 1/2. Ooh, interesting. So I'm going to plot it at the fourth one. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. So this is 4/8. 2 and 4/8 goes here. Okay, so I'm going to mark that one off. 2 and 2/8. Let's plot that one. 1, 2. This is going to be 2 and 2/8. There we go. Mark that off. Let's look at this one here. 2 and 1/8. Ooh, getting really close to each other. That's the first 8th, so 2 and 1/8. Okay. Let me see if I can, I'm going to change my, so it's a little bit smaller. Okay, do we see any more? Oh, here we go. 2 and 5/8. So if this is 4/8, 5/8 is just one more. 2 and 5/8. Wow, okay. Now let's look at fourths. Fourths. Okay, I have 2 and 2/4. Well, what is half of 4? 2. So 2 and 2/4 is also equal to 2.5. Oh, interesting. So I'm going to find where my half is. Halfway is where this, I'm going to have to use another color, where the 2 and 4/8 is. So we can say that 2 and 2/4 also goes here because this is also the halfway mark. Okay, and 4/8 is equal to a half, and 2/4 is equal to a half. All right, so I did this one also. All right, I believe this is 2 and 1/4. Yes, this is Sasha's. Okay, 2 and 1/4. So now we're thinking about. Okay, now we're kind of comparing here. 2 and 1/4. I'll write that here so it's more clear. Where would that fit in here? So I definitely know it's less than a half. Okay, so it's going to be less than where 2 and 4/8 and 2 and 2/2 is. Okay, so let's start at the beginning where we see 2 wholes. Okay, 2 and 1/4 is greater than 2 wholes. We know that. We know it only has 1 out of its 4 pieces. So it's going to be in this range. It's not going to be after the half. Okay, it's somewhere in this range. So let's look at our first line plot. 2 and 1/8. Well, if I have a pizza and it's divided into 8 pieces, and I only have one of those, that's pretty small. If I have a pizza and it's divided into fourths, and I have 1/4, that piece is going to be greater. Okay, so it's greater than 2 and 1/8, so I can keep going. Let's look here now at 2 and 2/8. Well, what is half of 8? It would be 4. Okay, so if I have 2 out of 8 pieces, let's count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8. That's 4. So 2/8, that's also equal to fourths. Let me write that up here. 2/8. If I'm dividing that by 4, let me rewrite that because that doesn't quite make sense like that. If I'm dividing 2 into 8, there we go. 2, 4, 6, 8, it equals fourths. Okay, equals 4. So 2 and 2/8 is the same as 2 and 1/4. So if I'll rewrite this one more time. 2/8. How many times can 2 go into 2 for dividing this by 2? Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1, Miss Hawkinson. Okay, and what is 2 divided by 8? How many times can 2 go into 8? 4 times. Okay, so this 2/8 is equivalent to 1/4. So right at 2 and 2/8, let me draw a line, is where our 2 and 1/4 can go. And if you also drew 2/8 off to the side and 1/4 off to the side, you would notice that it would be the same. Okay, very last one. All right, and our very last one is 2 and 1/2. Well, we found some equivalent fractions to a half, didn't we? Let's look right where we labeled a half. We have 2 and 4/8. We have 2 and 2/4. And then we shall also have 2 and 1/2. So all 3 of these fractions are the same, are equivalent. Let's think about what is the greatest fraction that we have just plotted. What's the greatest fraction we've plotted? So I'm going to look all the way furthest to the right. Where is my fraction all the way to the right that I've plotted? Oh, that's going to be 2 and 5/8. That's our greatest fraction that we've plotted. What's our least or smallest fraction we've plotted? Oh, that's down here. That's 5/8. Okay, so if I were to ask you some questions, you should be able to read this line plot and be able to say, oh, I know that 2 and 2/8 is greater than 5/8. Okay, just by looking at this line plot. All right, fourth graders, you will have a similar problem to do on your own. You'll get some data that you will need to plot on a line plot. using these strategies. So you first want to write out all the fractions, identify the fractions that are less than a whole, greater than a whole, greater than 2, etc. However high your data goes. It's helpful to write them out how I did here first, and then you can visually see them before you start plotting it. And then when you get to fractions that are very similar, you want to start comparing them. All right, fourth graders, that's it. Module 5, Lesson 28, I can plot fractions on a line plot.